You probably know Chip Gaines from Fixer Upper, right? Well, in his 2017 book, Capital Gains, he lays out all the smart things he supposedly learned from doing, in his own words, stupid stuff. So in this explainer, we're going to break down the key stories from his memoir and see if they really hold up under a critical lens. Now, this isn't your typical business how-to guide. Nope, it's really a collection of personal stories, and they're all built around one big idea. Our biggest mistakes are often our greatest teachers. It's all about how that stupid stuff can actually lead to the smartest results. So the big question is this a must-read for anyone trying to build something, or does it only really speak to a certain kind of person? To figure that out, we're going to dive into the book's best stories and weigh them against a pretty insightful review. And right off the bat, book reviewer Brittany Shields doesn't pull any punches. She basically suggests the book has a very specific audience. So let's dig into the content and see why she might have come to that conclusion. Okay, so the core philosophy of the entire book really starts with this one childhood story, a story about being the underdog, a moment that completely shaped how he looks at failure and strength. Picture this. Chip's 7 years old and he can't even get his ABC straight. While all the other kids were in cool reading groups like the Eagles and the Falcons, birds that soar, he got sent to the gym with the Penguins. And yeah, that sounds kind of humiliating, but for him, it was an adventure. And that experience became his whole philosophy. Sure, the Eagles could fly, but penguins? They're amazing swimmers. The lesson here is that a perceived weakness, that thing that makes you different, might just be the source of your greatest, most unique strength. It kind of makes you wonder, what's your penguin skill? And to really hammer this point home, he lists out these famous failures. Basically, other penguins who totally changed the game. I mean, Walt Disney getting fired for lacking imagination, or Michael Jordan getting cut from his high school team, it all builds on this central theme. Failure isn't the end, it's just a different way to begin. All right, so this theme of failure builds to one of the most important moments of his life. It's a story all about what happens when the one thing you've built your entire identity around is just gone. From the time he was a little kid, baseball was his entire world. It wasn't just a game, it was who he was. He even talks about how it was the foundation of his relationship with his dad. Everything, the pride, the connection, the disappointment, it was all tied to how he performed on that field. There was no plan B. And then, just like that, bam, it was over. He got cut from his college team. He writes about falling into this deep depression, feeling totally and completely lost, because the only dream he ever had just got crushed. His whole world just fell apart. This forced him to pivot from plan A to plan B, and it became the defining moment of his young adult life. He went from chasing this one very specific dream to discovering this new, scrappy passion for entrepreneurship. And he argues that all that grit he learned on the field was the perfect training for starting businesses from scratch. And he really sums up this whole life-altering experience with this one quote. For him, the failure that felt like the absolute end of the world was actually the thing that opened the door to a way bigger and better future. But hey, just because he became an entrepreneur didn't mean he instantly had it all figured out. Not even close. This next story, the one in Mexico, is the ultimate example of doing stupid stuff. So get this. While running 3 different businesses, Chip decides he's going to take a 3-month trip to Mexico to learn Spanish. And this was his actual to-do list before he left. Not pay vendors or train a manager. Nope. Just get cash, a mixtape, and a tan. Now contrast that tiny list with the mountain of responsibilities he just dumped on his then-girlfriend Joanna, who already had her own full-time job. He basically just threw her the keys to his entire chaotic mess of businesses and drove off. And, well, you can probably guess what happened next. The whole thing imploded almost immediately. With no cash in the bank, his checks to subcontractors started bouncing. Before long, you had angry vendors showing up at Joanna's dad's tire shop demanding their money. It was a complete disaster. This all led to a furious phone call and this ultimatum. And this is the key. This catastrophe was his real wake-up call. The total humiliation of it all, of letting everyone down, finally forced him to realize the difference between just playing businessman and actually being one. So the book is just packed with stories like these, really valuable lessons wrapped up in some pretty wild anecdotes. They're super inspiring for sure, but they also raise some questions. So now let's bring back that critical perspective we talked about at the beginning. Okay, so the big messages are all about grit, faith, and finding strength in failure. And those are all undeniably positive things. But the reviewer, Brittany Shields, brings up a few interesting points about how the book is actually put together. First up, the writing style itself. Shields points out that while it totally fits Chip's folksy personality, it also leans really heavily on cliches and common sayings. So if you're a reader who really appreciates more creative, fresh writing, this might be a bit of a turnoff. Her next critique is a little more philosophical. She felt that the intense focus on making your dreams come true was at times a bit me-centered, and that it sometimes overshadowed the other themes of faith and serving others that Chip talks about. And you can really see this idea in his management style. Chip is a big believer in making his employees figure it out on their own, because he thinks it helps them learn. But the reviewer points out that, from another angle, these situations could seem less like teaching moments and more just unnecessary or selfish. So what's the bottom line? Should you read it? Well, if you're an entrepreneur or just a huge Gaines fan, the book's energy is probably going to fire you up. But if you're looking for more polished writing or a philosophy that's less focused on the individual, this might not be for you. In the end, the book is a lot like its author, full of heart, a ton of grit, and yeah, some rough edges. The real question is that the kind of coach you're looking for right now?